Hi, I'm Kevin Drinkall.
Hi, and I'm Michel Nicolai, and we welcome you to Zyzel Networks podcast.
We've been in the network industry for over 15 years, and in these podcasts we want to try and untangle the world of networking, debunk some of those myths, explain some real-world examples along the way, to help you make better choices about selecting the right tech, product, and even help you guys build faster, more reliable, scalable networks, or just to keep your kids happy at home. Well, welcome back for another podcast. Today we're going to talk about our security series, the H Series, Michelle.
Yeah, the H Series. And we got a new product in there since January with the new 50H and the HP series.
Absolutely. So the whole series now contains 5 models, which includes this new 50H and 50HP. So just a few months ago, we launched this product. And I would say the big or most significant difference in terms of bringing a model like this into the beginning of the range is in the past, this was, I would say, fairly limited in feature sets or function, right?
Yeah, because it only contained content filter, because it was not powerful enough to provide you the full security kit. And of course, Zyzel is also standing for that we want to offer you the full kit as much as possible. So therefore, we established to have this possibility in this model as well. So the 50 gives you the full UTM package as you have on the other models. And not only the UTM, but also the zero-day protection. Yeah, for instance, the sandboxing, that's really important.
Oh, excellent. So even on those smaller products for, smaller branch offices, etc., you can still deliver that high-end security feature set that we have which is pretty rich in all the products across the series.
Yeah, and you're missing out none of the additional features. Everything is there.
The other thing that's great about the H series is that unlike the previous series of firewall that we used to have in the past, is that all of the ports are configurable. So you can configure multiple WAN or all LAN or... So
it doesn't matter, how many WAN or LAN ports you want. You just configure as you were, and we can do this. So it's a big enhancement.
So extremely flexible product, even on the 50H and 50HP, which we just introduced as well, right? So now we have these 5 models in the series that give us the whole kind of package, right? And on top of that, they have some really high-end performance. So right at the very top end, we have the USG FLEX H, which is 15 gigabits per second SPI throughput, right?
It's really fast, And it can be done because we're now offering multi-gig interfaces on the devices as well.
I see most of the models, they have multi-gig options, the 2.5 gig, and then some like the top end.
Yeah, as of the 200H and higher, it is 2.5. Below there, it's 1 gig. Yeah, it's a great improvement on the interface speed.
Yeah, so and then obviously on the 700 and some of those models, they have a 10 gig variant of the copper and obviously fiber as well, right?
And you can decide if you want to use it on the WAN side or on the LAN side. It's up to your convenience, how you like to use it.
So very, very flexible in terms of functionality and deployments, right?
And did you know that we even now put PoE-enabled ports on the devices? That is something that people are waiting for as a nice additional feature.
Yeah, I mean that really rounds it off as quite a nice solution out of the box. So use cases that you could use that for are quite varied, right? But I will give you some examples. Like for example, if you wanted to use one of the connectivity as a WAN for 5G or your products, you could use
a failover. You mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So you could use something like the FWA 710 out of our Zyzel series, and this would remove a lot of the complexity, which is it's basically a single cable, powers the device, puts it straight into the WAN port.
And normally your firewall is behind the UPS, and now your 5G connection is also protected because through your firewall.
Yeah.
So it's a perfect solution together.
And reduces some of the, I would say, redundancy or the complexity in failure points as well, because there's less components in it. So traditionally, when you're deploying this, you would normally have to use a PoE injector, which needs to go into a plug. So there's another component there in the process. So that's a really nice kind of feature. But it doesn't stop you from using it from anything else, right? Of course, you could use it for a wireless access point or something like that, right?
Or a camera if you want. Yeah.
I think if you're using it for an access point is quite a nice little solution. So you can put, an office, you can put one plug basically can still do the security device and the access point in a whole solution, right? Yeah. Many times, when I've talked about firewalls in the past with customers, they normally put it inside a cabinet, right? Which means when you put wireless inside there, it's not going to work very well. It's metal cage, right? So at least this gives you an option to use a PoE out power
on the place where you really want to have it.
Yeah, and then you can power an access point. Even for small offices, it makes it a very, very small and tidy solution. And obviously you can manage the access point and the device in Nebula, right?
Yeah. Now we talked mostly of the hardware, but also I think we changed a bit in the software as well, I think.
Yeah, so this H Series introduces a brand new approach in terms of how we're going to move forward. And we built a new operating system, which we called UOS. There's lots of information on the website about it, but mainly the whole point is to make operating system faster, and it's completely packed with new features and functions that actually we couldn't achieve in the previous models. So it's much more comprehensive in methods of deployment and configuration. And also we applied functionality to not only protect traffic going through the firewall, but actually we put tools in there to protect itself as well. So this is something that, you can create firewalls, but we also added the function into the product, part of the operating system, to enable you to scale out, etc. So, and a good example of, I would say a new method of configuration is around VPNs, especially.
It's a little bit different than on the legacy product, isn't it?
Yeah, it's much more comprehensive in terms of how it's configured. We introduced policy-based and routing-based VPNs and even dual WAN VPN redundancy, which is more like replacement of SD-WAN, right? I would say, a lot of people are looking for SD-WAN, they only want this element of SD-WAN. So, but, we brought this in to kind of introduce more function and enhancements. And over time, we'll add even more features around this as well, right? For those of you who are familiar with our older generation firewalls, I would say it's a quick learning curve to understand the new method of configuring. So just bear that in mind if you're migrating away from our own products to new ones. Fully packed, so it's fully featured, and he does whatever he did before and more by a long shot. So, but obviously to deploy it, it's a kind of newer feature set, etc. And
Yeah, but also talking about software, the H series, the firewall is now fully hybrid. So you can use it on premise, but also from the cloud. So that's also new, that we have a single configuration to have both options available.
Yeah, so that means natively, over time we're adding more and more functions into Nebula, so you can configure it natively inside. But for those features that we don't have inside the interface, you can actually access securely via Nebula. You can access the local interface to the device and apply the configuration changes, which the design of this process is different to how we used to do older generation devices. It was kind of, if you had it configured in Nebula, you could only configure it in Nebula. And if you configured it in on-premise mode, then it meant that you could only do one or the other. And of course, we had like this monitoring mode in between, but just gave you access to the local interface of the device without configuring things. And this method is basically both, right? So you get a best of both worlds.
Exactly, and much more flexibility, as well. Another thing that we do, we enhance on the security as well, I don't believe.
Yeah, so in terms of this, we have included an entry defense pack, right? So we've added some basic level of security to the H series. So by no means it's a replacement for the gold pack, which gives you the full leverage of cybersecurity functionality. And to be honest with you, if you're using this type of device, you should really be using the gold pack to defend against today's threats, right? So, without doubt, that's the defense mechanisms that we would recommend you to use. Where it
we think that is mandatory for you to use.
Yeah, it gives you multi-layered protection against multiple types of threats. Combining them all together using this gold pack, which is like Michelle mentioned at the beginning. it's this cybersecurity, but also with this zero-day threat, with sandboxing and all these kind of features to really enhance the experience and defense against threats. So I would say when we're looking back, obviously, we give a general overview there of the H series, but actually more recently we introduced more and more feature functions that customers have been looking for in the product. And I think, one of the kind of nicest or biggest ones is that we introduced device HA, so high availability in the 200H series and above. Our latest approach here is that we brought this in as standard. So
yeah. There's only a small remark. Make sure you do HA between exactly the same models. So you cannot do HA between 200 and 500. It has to be the same device. So a 200H compared to an H, or an HP against an HP, because it needs to be the same model. It's free of charge to use, no additional license cost, and then you have your HA functionality within the box.
Yeah, so this really sets us apart from a lot of the competitors, right, where they normally charge for high availability service, right? So you just basically need to buy two of the same models, right, and configure them in HA, right? Again, you can. This is a good example of where we have this hybrid feature approach where you can configure this in the on-premise mode and still configure the functions in Nebula as well at the same time.
And remember, the licenses are stacked. So if you have two devices with the bundle, then if you put it in HA, you start off with a solution with 2 years of protection because we stack the license.
So in the last update, we also added a whole bunch of interfaces and features and firewall configuration functions to Nebula, including things like, address services, zones, objects, etc. So there's so much more functionality that we added into the Nebula so you can do configure natively, right? And this really allows you to do a basic configuration of the firewall in Nebula without going into the local interface. And I think this is, massive improvement. And also we add in more and more features into the Nebula interface as we go on. We'll talk a little bit about that either in this session or in another podcast as we move along as well.
Yeah, and therefore we also now sync the local configuration within Nebula. So single configuration deployment. So that's a great achievement.
Yeah, so what does this really mean for you? It means that when you make changes in the local interface, actually they will be synchronized with Nebula.
And applied, of course.
Yeah, so this is a completely new design in how the firewall interacts with the Nebula management platform. So before it was one or the other. Now we have this, like I said before, we mentioned it a bit earlier in the podcast, right, that it's really synchronized between the two methods. And I think that's a really clever way of working forward to sort of meet everyone's demands and be flexible in almost every approach that we take there as well.
And remember, we also introduced a more comprehensive VPN management, making the type of configuration much easier along the deploying features like NAT over IPsec and SIP LG as a new feature that we implemented.
Yeah, we also enhanced backup, restore functionalities, which I think is super important in, when an engineer wants to make a change, we can back up the functionality and then restore it if they want to go back to it. And also we added more enhancements around monitoring and traffic analysis. We have packet analysis tool now built into the product, allowing customers to dig deeper into the packet information and help them really troubleshoot traffic, not only for the firewall, but also for applications and users much, much quicker than they could have done before. So these are really, really comprehensive tools that we've added onto the end of the firewall. So not only just a cybersecurity device with all those really enhanced features, but also giving you tools to find where issues may be in the network or traffic or even users or even with applications that are passing through the firewall itself.
Yeah, so I think we have a quite complete firewall that we can offer.
So looking ahead for us, because next we have another update that brings us a whole new feature set as well, right? So this is what's really nice is we started to get into fairly regular updates, adding more and more function and features into the products. Not very far away now, right, where we have all these new features coming. So, but there's too many to kind of go through in the podcast, but what kind of things do you think, are you really looking for that you think is of interest?
Yeah, I've been talking to customers for months now, and typically the WireGuard support, the VPN support that we're going to introduce is really something that I'm looking forward to, because that's something new. It gives some more functionality that we have never done before in the past, and in the market is really asking for this kind of functionality. So I'm really looking forward to supporting this.
There's so many more features that are going to be Nebula enabled in this product as well.
Of course, we're going to enhance that further on to make sure that you can do more and more from the Nebula interface. But if you're interested to learn more about the functionality, to learn about the differences, how to set up the unit, feel free to watch out to any kind of email or other kind of communication we do over social media to invite you to learn from us over a webinar or training in the near future.
Yeah, so it really looks like this product's shaping up and maturing really nicely and bringing lots and lots of functionality as we go through. So really excited to see how this product really progresses. And like you say, we do have webinars scheduled to cover, the release or the next releases, and to really take you on that journey with us, as well as we add more and more functionality in both Nebula and standalone version of the USG H Series. So, stay tuned. We're probably going to do another podcast as well as we progress when we get more and more features into the product as well. And like Michelle said, things like the WireGuard, where it's quite interesting. If you need to know more information about that, we'll cover in actual webinars. So I think where you can interact and ask questions and understand about that as well. So look out for those ahead. And thank you very much for joining our podcast.
Thank you, and see you next time.